The first note didn't sound perfect, and that was exactly why everyone stopped breathing. It cracked slightly at the edge, raw and unpolished, like a truth too heavy to stay hidden. In a crowded, dimly lit roadside café where no one expected anything extraordinary, a boy no older than 14 stood clutching a worn-out guitar that had clearly lived a harder life than most people in the room. His clothes were faded, his shoes torn at the seams, and his eyes held a quiet storm. But when he opened his mouth to sing, the world shifted. His name was Ian, and most people in the small town barely noticed him. He was just another poor boy who ran errands, washed dishes, and disappeared into the background of everyone else's busy lives. He lived with his mother in a crumbling one-room house on the edge of town, where the roof leaked every time it rained and the nights were filled with the hum of distant traffic and unspoken worries. His father had left years ago, chasing a promise of a better life that never returned. Since then, Ian had grown up faster than he should have, carrying responsibilities heavier than his fragile frame. Music was the only thing that made the weight bearable. He didn't learn it from a teacher or a school. He learned it from old cassette tapes his mother used to play when she still smiled more often. Among those tapes was one song that stayed with him, echoing in his mind long after the music stopped, Hotel California. He didn't understand all the words at first, but he understood the feeling. There was something haunting, something lonely, something real in it that matched the silence in his own life. Every night, after finishing his chores, he would sit outside under a flickering streetlight and play. His guitar had missing paint and loose strings, but he treated it like treasure. Neighbors would sometimes hear him, pausing for a moment before moving on. To them, it was just a boy singing. To Ian, it was survival. The cafe owner, a tired man named Kareem, was the first to really listen. One evening, as Ian helped wash dishes in the back, Kareem heard him humming the melody of Hotel California. He stopped, leaned against the wall, and listened. There was something different in the boy's voice, not trained, not perfect, but honest in a way that couldn't be taught. "Sing that again," Kareem said. Ian hesitated. "It's nothing. It's not nothing," Kareem replied firmly. That night, for the first time, Ian sang in front of someone. His hands trembled, his voice wavered, but he didn't stop. When he finished, the kitchen was silent. Kareem made a decision that would change everything. "Tomorrow night, you sing in the cafe." Ian's heart pounded. "People won't like it." Kareem shook his head. "They will feel it. That's enough." The next evening, Ian stood in front of a small crowd. Most of them weren't paying attention. Some were talking, others scrolling through their phones, a few sipping tea without a care in the world. No one expected magic. Then he began. The first chord rang out, slightly off tune but filled with something deeper than perfection. His voice followed, raw and unfiltered, carrying every struggle he had ever faced. The lyrics didn't just sound like a song anymore, they sounded like a story being lived in real time. Slowly, conversations faded. Phones were lowered. Eyes turned toward the boy in the corner. There was pain in his voice, but also strength. There was loneliness, but also hope. Each line felt like it came from a place most people tried to hide. By the time he reached the chorus, something incredible had happened. The room wasn't just listening anymore, it was feeling. A woman at the back wiped her tears without realizing it. A man who had been laughing moments ago sat still, his expression softened. Even Kareem stood frozen, watching the boy he had almost overlooked transform the entire space. When the final note lingered in the air, there was silence again, but this time, it was different. It wasn't empty. It was full. Then came the applause. It started with one person, then another, until the entire cafe erupted. Ian stood there, stunned, his hands shaking, his eyes searching for something he couldn't quite name. For the first time in his life, he felt seen. But the journey didn't suddenly become easy. The next days brought attention, yes, but also doubt. Some people praised him, others dismissed him. Just a lucky performance, they said. He'll fade away. Opportunities came, but so did challenges. He struggled with confidence, with fear of failure, with the pressure of expectations. At home, things were still hard. His mother fell ill, and medical bills began to pile up. Ian faced a choice: keep chasing music or return to working full-time to support her. The dream that had just begun to breathe felt like it was slipping away. One night, sitting beside his mother as she slept, he held his guitar and stared at the ceiling. "What if they're right?" he whispered to himself. "What if I'm not enough?" His fingers moved instinctively, playing the familiar chords of Hotel California. But this time, he didn't sing for anyone else. He sang for himself. And something inside him answered. He realized that his voice didn't need to be perfect. It didn't need approval. It just needed to be true. The next performance was different. Not because he was less afraid, but because he chose to sing anyway. And that choice made all the difference. A video of his performance eventually found its way online. It spread quietly at first, then rapidly. People from different places, different lives, began to connect with his voice. They didn't see just a poor boy, they saw resilience, honesty, and a reminder of something they had forgotten in themselves. Help came in unexpected ways. A local musician offered to mentor him. Donations helped cover his mother's treatment. Opportunities to perform grew. But through it all, Ian stayed the same boy who once sang under a streetlight, holding on to the one thing that never left him, his truth. Years later, when people asked him what changed his life, he didn't talk about fame or success. He talked about that first moment in the cafe, when his imperfect voice made people feel something real. Because in a world chasing perfection, it was his rawness that became magic. And that is the message his story leaves behind: your voice doesn't have to be flawless to matter. Your story doesn't have to be extraordinary to be heard. What matters is the courage to share it, even when your hands are shaking and your heart is unsure. Because sometimes, the most powerful magic comes not from being perfect, but from being real.